Right, I think we're on time. So, last but not least, we have the second green working group session, and the last one of the last sessions of this ITF. So we'll just talk about what we plan for this session. It may well be we've got 2 hours assigned in terms of time, but I suspect we may not need all that. So we will go for what we have, and then if we have spare time, we can cut it a bit shorter. The note, well, I suspect most of you have seen this already this week, but I will just repeat the text. This is a note, well, this is a reminder about the process and policies, including the conduct, privacy, and intellectual property rights you agree to follow when you participate in the ITF. And by being in this meeting, you are participating. Please read it carefully. You're encouraged to read the source documents to which the note well refers. If you have questions, please talk to the working group chairs or area directors. I don't think we need to wait any longer. So the agenda for today, the second session is, I've got 10 minutes for intro by chairs. I'm not sure we'll need 10 minutes for this, but we mainly want to talk about the green base models, like the modeling work, and that will be happening like the latter part of this. We've got 80 minutes assigned. I don't think we'll necessarily use that full 80 minutes, but we'll have like this design team light update from Jan. And we'll also have Benoit talking about green device models, but he's been put on the spot effectively this week. So this is like a last minute presentation. So thank you, Benoit, for doing that. So the idea here is, as per the previous ITF meetings, we're trying to get agreement and base drafts for these models. And the approach that was agreed from the last ITF was to set up some design team meetings, but not actually design team meetings because we could do them more generally. It seems like we were a bit late getting those going, but they did get going. But again, not really enough to get much traction with the work. So as part of that, Benoit has agreed to help with Gen and also Marisol to help Jan to try and drive those forward. And the goal here is to try and get some base models as a starting point that we can then discuss and get consensus around, agree and drive forward. So that's the goal there. So there'll be some discussion in the sort of second part of this session discussing those. Before that, we've got two presentations, one on the Petra Green API and then Smart PDU, those two. And these are more like future-looking pieces of work potentially that might build top of these base models. We've put them this way around so we can have a large variable size chunk of time for the base model discussions. And there's also a new proposal about application layer efficiency for web crawling that Anton's going to present remotely. I suspect that if that work does find a home in the ITF, this might not be the right working group to do that work. But it'd be interesting to see if there's general interest in what's being presented there and whether we should try to see if there is other places in ITF to present that work or be interested to take that forward. I'll talk about this now rather than the end. We'll come back to it, but just plans after the ITF 124. So there were some design team meetings that we started, and those will sort of continue with design team light meetings. I think the plan will be, and we'll modify this as we go, that those might become every 2 weeks rather than every week. And then that allows Benoit, again, Jan and Marisol to sort of work between those every 2 weeks to actually come up with issues and things and suggestions to help drive that work forward. So that's the sort of plan at the moment. We'll have some more discussion about that later, but after ITF, we can have interim meetings if needs be. I don't know if there's any topics that we need to discuss. I think Diego and I need to check if there's anything more we need to do with the liaison statements we received as well. But it would be good also to say, we want to try and make some more progress on the list. There's 2 adoption polls currently open. They'll be open for another week after this ITF meeting. So if you get a chance to review that, they would be really helpful for Diego and I to be able to judge consensus on those documents. So we'd like to get those sort of done and dusted. And then hopefully we'll start, if the authors agree, start an adoption poll on the framework document. So I don't know, Benoit. So he's nodding his head. So once those have been completed, we will then try and do an adoption poll for the framework document as well. So we've got some base drafts in the working group that we can start pinning the rest of this work around, I think, as we try and adopt some data model base drafts as well. So that's the agenda as proposed. This opportunity for any agenda bashing. If anyone's got any comments today. It's been a long week. Everyone's tired, wanted to get home. Right. So I think it's Petra first up. So is it Louis presenting? Where's that? Oh, confirm section.
So hello everyone. This is Luis from Telefónica. I will present on behalf of my co-authors Alberto, Marisol, Jan, and Adrian. So this is an update of Path Energy Traffic Radio API, and let me comment on what is basically the day's motivation and next steps. So the original motivation for this work was to provide visibility about the energy consumption in a path in the network, so that we can basically retrieve from that API the metrics that could be of interest for the consumers of that API, that could be the power consumption across this path. And because we associated first with external customers, SD1 customers, and so we introduced the possibility of allocating or making it proportional to the throughput. So somehow the throughput is considered in the API, even though we could even retrieve the complete energy of a path. So for that purpose, for getting this visibility, we defined this API based on Jan models, and as said, the original idea was to make it available so that the external consumers can get the information, but also internal consumers could get it and basically use it for optimization purposes or whatever purpose that could be relevant for the consumer. We are not entering on the details of these purposes in the draft. We are simply focusing on the fact of retrieving the information. So the draft was presented in IETF 1.1, 1.3, and now 1.4. An early version of this was presented in PANERG in IETF 1.2 with the initial ideas and also incorporating some other aspects that has been now removed and has been moved to sustain. This is why we are creating this spin-off of the draft contributed to sustain. Adrian presented this morning, and in that case we are focusing on other things that are not relevant for green charter, like carbon emission, energy mix, and these kind of things. So here in green we are essentially focusing on the energy consumption, power consumption for the path. So the changes that we introduced in this new version, we refined the wording. For instance, removing what is related to sustainability and focusing on energy management. We are also considering endpoints not represented only by IP addresses. The initial purpose or the initial approach was focusing on IP addresses, so IP origin, IP destination. But we understand that there will be other cases that are not related with IP addresses itself. This could be the case of optical networks, for instance, or it could be the case of other communication constructs like the network slices. So there could be other services in summary that are not identified only by IP addresses or not at all by IP addresses, and we want to cover them. We focus on watts per gigabit as the information being retrieved by the API. So again, focusing on the energy consumption. We also added in this version a positioning of Petra in relation with the RFC 8309, which is about the service models, or the name of this RFC is Service Model Explain. I will cover it in the next slide. So basically positioning Petra as potential API at different levels of service model, customer model, and network model. We added security considerations that were not present before, and we added a new annex about SLA negotiation for energy efficient services. So because the initial approach of this was to make this API available for external customers, so we could relate this with SLAs or green SLAs, if we want to call it. So this is why we are also introducing this notion of SLA negotiation in the new version. And finally, we updated the author list. Adrian is now on the front page, and we moved Alejandro and Fernando to the contribution sections, and also we added Roland as contributor. So going to the positioning of Petra with respect to RFC 8309, as I mentioned before, we in the previous version even, we started to commend the possibility of Petra having Petra as a recursive API so that we can start collecting at different levels the information of the consumption and aggregating it in the upper levels. So going specifically to RFC 8309. We define the network configuration models. We define service delivery model. We define customer service model. So we understand that Petra could play a role in each of these different levels. Basically, yeah, with this recursiveness, being able to collect the information, aggregate the information, and serve the purposes of consumers or consumers of the API, either at customer level, service level, or network level. Also, putting in context of the Green Framework, the Green Framework now, and this was presented by Benoit in the first session of Green, in the Green Framework is now appears now this API service interface. So Petra could be one of the potential solutions, not the only one, but could be one of the potential APIs to be applied to at this level. So basically collecting information from this controller. If we relate this with the previous slide, so we can consider also that we have controllers of controllers and then covering the different levels with this recursiveness that I was commenting before. So next steps is gather and incorporate working group feedback as always, confirm also the validity of the approach. As said, we are considering Petra as one of these candidate APIs from the framework, but also those other ideas of recursiveness or not only focusing on IP addresses as the endpoint, endpoints defined by IP addresses is something that we would like to have feedback from the working group. Is pending from our side to explore incentivized scenarios. So thinking on external customers, so how the external customers could play with this API for somehow getting get their own incentives or act in the network based on the information that are retrieving from the network. Generalize the model, as said, for being not only for IP endpoints and align with the green modeling efforts to ensure consistency and basically to ensure consistency, basically. So this is all from my side. I think the rest is backup.
Any questions or comments? I don't see any. So is it, you're not asking for adoption at this stage, is that correct?
We think that is more or less stable, apart from the points that are there. So the point is to clarify, I mean, we would like to go for adoption, sure, but not sure if yet the positioning of the API is clear for the working group, but we need to wait first for the adoption of the framework and then going for this and so.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. Ahmed, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, because I think in terms of adoption, so I think it's a little bit early for this one because it depends on the granularity that you want to, I would say, enter into it. If you are trying to touch into the path level, so there are some computation there and routing stuff that I think that's something to clarify better. Definitely, yes, the service API is more generic, but it depends on, I would say, the actual information that you want to get into.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So is the right solution at the moment just to keep this as a draft that is of interest to the working group, but not yet adopt it or ask for adoption and carry on presenting and evolving and getting feedback on the document? That's stage.
That's perfect and fair.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of once we've got the base models and things, then we can come back and see if once those are stable, not stabilized, but once they start taking shape, that'd be a good time to potentially move forward with this.
Good.
Yeah. Just a question regarding the units.
Yep.
The choice of units is something that has a particular rationale. Do you plan to, to discuss here with the core model, etc., the units? You plan to extend the units? I don't know. It's
we are departing from that watts per gigabyte because the initial idea, as I said, was to provide this to external services, and I'm thinking on the allocation per the throughput of that service. We are open for sure to discuss on metrics. Maybe it's something that we can bring for any of the next versions to debate on that. But by now we are considering that from the idea of having proportion to the allocation of the consumption be proportional to the throughput of the flow.
No.
In the path.
I mean, I'm not saying that this is something that makes sense. The point is try to, the same way that you update this, is trying to influence a little bit the other work, because this is, there is a reflection behind these choices, and that will be interesting.
Definitely, we can consider more work on that. Yeah.
Okay. And you're presenting next.
Yeah, I'm presenting next as well. So this work is for a YAM model for smart PDUs for enabling the monitoring and control of these smart PDUs, and again, also for retrieving information from them. And this has been done in collaboration with Osama and Arthur together with me. So the motivation is, well, it's clear that power distribution units are essential because are the ones feeding with power and energy the different devices in data centers, points of presence, and so. And these PDUs are evolving to something which is called smart PDU, essentially being able to provide telemetry and control remotely. So the point is that these smart PDUs are till now, basically proprietary solutions with heterogeneous APIs and data formats. So our idea was to provide a kind of vendor-neutral YAM model that could help us to homogenize the management and control of these kind of devices. You can see in the picture one of these smart PDUs on my lab. So essentially, basically we plug there the different devices, could be servers, could be routers, could be whatever device that is part of the communication of the forwarding. And the idea set is to retrieve information from this device, but also trying to, if the device support that, to provide control and management capabilities on top of it. So the objectives of the models is define this standardized and vendor-neutral approach for controlling the smart PDUs, retrieving information and controlling, so that we can have real-time energy telemetry and have the control on top of these PDUs at outlet level or the entire PDU itself. So facilitating the operation at the end, automation and operation. Use cases that we think that could be enabled, apart from the monitoring, would be the remote control of the outlets, automatic power optimization, load balancing, and so on and so far. You can see a picture of what we have in mind on this. So what we assume is that there will be either network management system or cloud management systems operating on top of the infrastructure. You see that the API that we are defining would be that REST-con YAM interface that we are highlighting there, so that thinking on having a common wrapper that somehow interacts with the diversity of the different proprietary implementation of the smart PDUs. We assume that each smart PDU will have their own vendor-native API, so we will need this intermediate layer in order to adapt and work with these particular implementations case by case. So, you want Carlos?
Carlos Bernardo. So probably an out of the blue question, but in any case, I want to ask it. Are you familiar with what Home Assistant does for kind of a smart home type of environments? Because I do use that, and I have something that resembles to this in the sense that I have different PDUs for home from different vendors, and I still use the same kind of template to be able to monitor the consumption, to turn off, turn on, to do actions based on the consumption. It's for a kind of smart home type of activities, but it's kind of similar. So maybe it would be good to take a look at what they are doing in terms of how they do a generic middle thing wrapper and how they interact with the different vendors.
Yep, I'm not familiar with that, so you can share the links in the mailing list, or so it would be perfect. So I think the approach idea would be similar, so in a different environment, but if we can reuse something there,
yeah,
it's perfect.
Mainly because I mean there is a huge community of open source behind, so maybe there is a lot of code that you could potentially reuse.
Perfect, that's perfect. Thank you, Carlos. So design principles for the model, we target this unified and vendor-neutral wrapper. Let's say the idea would be to enable capability discovery in terms of telemetry, control, the granularity at different levels of in terms of outlet and so. Real-time monitoring, REST-con-based extensibility, at least this was the implementation that we did in the hackathon I will refer next. Cross-vendor interoperability and supporting automated energy policies and event notifications and alarms. Nigel has a question.
So just a quick point. Obviously, on capability, we've got that stuff in Ivy, and of course, this is an equipment, so it should be something that could be incorporated into the Ivy inventory model, I assume. So,
yeah,
Yeah, so the two separate. I mean, obviously not related directly to the key points you're making, but on the capability certainly. But on the other aspect, it's an equipment inventory item.
Yeah, in fact, this is a discussion that I was discussing before with Chin, if this is more a network device or something more related to inventory. So that probably could be something associated to the inventory. Probably would be
as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Oops.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is a second question.
Yeah, hi, Altrai from Cisco Meraki. This is my first time in this group. I'm just curious, when you say cross-vendor interoperability, are you also considering the energy grid providers like PSC or the California Power or Texas Power to interact with this?
Not initially. Not the purpose would be basically the manufacturers of the smart PDU, not the energy provider. But maybe something like we can think on. But the initial approach was basically the manufacturers of the smart PDUs. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So with that principles, we propose this, and let me be transparent. I'm not very expert on this, so probably it's not optimal and not the best model. So for sure, we are open to whatever suggestion and help on this. So certainly, we started thinking on different levels of modeling. One for the system itself, then modeling about the network, so considering network parameters and protocol enablement. You can see there is SNMP because the smart PDU that we were using has SNMP capabilities. Not sure if maybe it's too old-fashioned, but basically considering ways of retrieving the information, then information from the input lines, and maybe this could be associated with the question before, but basically was for retrieving information, not for doing anything with the providers of the energy, but simply to understand voltage, current, power, energy status, and so on. The outlets, because this is smart PDU, we have different outlets, so basically that we could control one by one. Sensors that could be either incorporated to the smart PDU or around the setup for the temperature, humidity, airflow. And finally, thresholds, if we want to essentially enable ways of reporting alarms or basic information once we define different levels of consumption, that this information could be obtained from it. I think Chin has a question here.
Yeah, thanks. So for this, it seems like information you really want to provide. But
could you speak closer, please, Chin?
Yeah, Chin Wu. Yeah. So for this, seems like not like a data model, like an information model, since you didn't describe, how different elements correlate with each other, like a PDU networker. And so I'm wondering whether these I can relate to the previous the people raised the similar question. For PDU, you model as a network device or model as an IoT device. So try to understand this. So PDU will be part of this network device or separate, right?
For the first part of your question, for sure. I mean, we are not experts on the modeling, so probably we have done not well or not in an optimal way, and we can revisit it for sure. So any suggestion is more than welcome. And for the second question, yeah, maybe this could be more associated to inventory than to a network device. At the end, there will be different or multiple network devices connected on top of the smart PDU, and somehow will be something static or I don't know. Maybe it depends on the capabilities. If we can reboot or we can do something with the smart PDU or just simply retrieving the information, could be lying on one side or in the other side.
Benoit speaking. So thanks, Luis. So I like what you have in there because it's going to highlight a couple of points I'm going to make later. What do you have? You've got like some measurements. You've got voltage, current, power. You've got like the link with the PDU, which is an entity. How do we link that? The link to the threshold, if you want to have that. And actually in there, you've got all the information that are somehow in a framework. Because what is a smart PDU? It's connecting something and monitoring something which is attached. And this is exactly the type of question I wanted us to deal with in this session for routers for smart PDUs. And I will come back to a couple of points you're making here when I present. Thank you.
So I was just going to ask, and things. Again, with these smart PDUs, these effectively separate devices in terms of how you're going to manage them in your network. They can have their own IP addresses and own reachability. Yes,
Yeah.
so they're separate devices and interconnected. So then I think this is a good model to start off with. I think I would look at trying to reuse and leverage some of the existing IETF models, like IETF interfaces and IETF IP, to do the connectivity and any other management ones, and then have these extra bits, which probably doesn't overlap much with what you have here, maybe not at all. But then think about the space of having a set of Yang models would you have collectively to manage one of these smart PDUs, which is like a separate consideration to this. But I think this is good, and I think data model is the right answer here. I think it's what's useful because you can actually access it. I think the information model then requires a data model. So I personally just think just doing data model is good.
Okay. Thank you.
That was all with no hats on.
So regarding implementation status, all this work started in the last hackathon. We developed a prototype for supporting a use case that we were presenting there. The captures are from that hackathon. This is linked with the green framework and the use cases drafts. And basically we demonstrated in the past hackathon this RESTCON-based operation with a more simple model than the one that I showed you before. So next steps for this will be to complete security and operational considerations, to extend interoperability testing with multiple vendors. We have just tested with one single vendor, Schneider. So it would be good if some participants of the working group are interested to join the effort and basically test some other implementation so that we can generalize as much as possible. And we are seeking for feedback that by the way, we already have received very interesting and very good feedback at the end, and potential contributors as well if people is interested on this. And we will make available, the model is not yet available, but we will upload to some GitHub and making it available for sure. Yeah, well, I said we are not experts.
So this is a new document, so thank you for bringing this. This is probably too early to ask. You're not asking for adoption at this stage, are you? No. Do you want to poll to see the interest at this stage?
Well, would be great, yeah. To see.
Yeah. So we'll type a quick poll just to see if people are interested in this work. I need to read the draft in more detail. I suspect it is well within the scope of what Green is looking at, and I think it probably would fit well with the other work we're doing, although secondary to like the base data models. Benoit, do you want to speak first?
Yes, please, because on the poll, I'm not sure what to answer. It's interesting, but I don't believe that this should be a smart PDU Yang module. Why? Because whenever we do the green framework, this is just one of the use cases. It could have an extension specifically for smart PDU, but in the end, it's the same one. So I don't want to standardize a smart PDU Yang module while we're going to have like a set of Yang modules that could be just reused for this. So I'm not sure I'm going to phrase your question, but I want to make sure you understand this.
Okay, so I feel that's in terms of the details of what the model ends up looking like. Is that as to whether you're saying if you have some base models here, this is going to end up augmenting into those structures? Is that what you're saying, or is it different? So I understand.
No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we're working right now on 3 Yang modules.
Yep.
One which is device, one which is device configuration, and one which is like a controller level. All right. I'm telling that those 3 models are somehow this model that we show. So what you're doing, Louis, is somehow an exercise, what we have to make in a generic way. So if we were doing this one, like right now for Smart PDU, are we going to do another one kind of similar, not the same for PoE, which is the same principle? No. So interesting, yes, in the exercise. Interesting, like to publish this as a Yang module? I don't think so. That makes sense? Mm-hmm.
So the question I'll ask to the room is do they think this? Actually, I'm not sure you need to ask. I think this work is in scope for the working group, and in terms of, I think the data models we're going to have to come up with have to cover this use case. It's already one of the use cases. So I think from that perspective, I'm not sure I'm getting useful questions to ask. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, is it Anton up next?
Hello, everybody.
Right, Anton, you should have slide control now.
Yes, can I try first? Okay, if it's working.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're good to go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anton Jurkovic. I will share measurement about results on application layer efficiency for web crawling using the collaboration tunnel, TCT. First, I want to thank the Green Working Group chairs and the RIA director for allowing me to present this work today. TCT demonstrates how existing HTTP semantics achieve significant efficiency without new headers. The diagram shows the 4-step pattern: HTML links to JSON endpoints, exposing content fingerprints as e-tags, enabling 304 not modified, and sitemap-based zero-fetch optimization. This is a production data, 917 URLs across 3 websites over multiple weeks, all running WordPress with the TCT plugin. Now let me frame the problem. Wasted bytes equal wasted joules. Every byte transfer consumes energy at multiple layers. Network transmission costs 0.003 to 0.14 kilowatts hours per gigabyte. Server consumes CPU to render HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Clients consume energy extracting content. Our measurements show 83% of HTML bytes are markup overhead, not the actual content crawlers need. 103 kilobytes gzips for HTML, just 17 kilobytes for the content. When crawlers repeatedly fetch unchanged content, they waste energy at all 3 layers. TCT eliminates wasted bytes at the protocol layer. TCT achieves efficiency through 2 layers. The layer 1 is efficient payloads. JSON instead of HTML. 70.7 kilobytes versus 103 kilobytes. It's obvious. No CSS, JavaScript, or ads, just pure content. 83% bandwidth is reducted. The server generates SHA-256 fingerprints from normalized content, expose it as a e-tag. This fingerprint is template invariant. Theme changes don't invalidate it. This is the authoritative payload model. The second layer is zero-fetch optimization. Traditional caching requires 1 request per URL. TCT provides a JSON sitemap listing all URLs with content hashes. Clients fetch it once, compare hashes locally, and skip unchanged URLs entirely. No requests mean 0 bytes and 0 energy. For change URLs, standard if not match conditional request, server returns 3 or 4 not modified if unchanged. Combined effects is 83 further bytes times 90% skip rate equals around 89 bandwidth elimination is steady state. Now, let me drill into the zero fetch TCTK contribution. Traditional caching, 1 request per URL, 500 URLs means 500 requests, even if nothing changed. TCT innovation is batch freshness checking. Sitemap provides content hash for all URLs. Client fetch sitemap once, compares hashes locally, not network. If match, skip the URL, 0 byte transfer. The diagram shows the flow. Fetch sitemap, compare locally, skip if match. We see 70 to 90 skip rates in production. For changed URLs, fetch will, if non-match, if still unchanged, serves return 3 or 4. Example, 500 URLs, 90% skip rate, sitemap enables skipping, 450 URLs, only 50 fetched. That's zero fetch optimization. Quantifying the impact. Bandwidth, 83% reduction measured in production with gzip size. Skip rate, 70 to 90 zero fetch in steady state. Network energy, published range is 0.03 to 0.14 kilowatt hours per gigabyte. We use 0.06 as conservative midpoint. This is direct and measurable. Server energy, HTML rendering costs more CPU than serving JSON, but impact depends on architecture. Deployment dependent. Client energy. Parsing HTML costs energy, but depends on model architecture and quantization. This is the model dependent. The diagram shows the chain. Byte saved translate to network savings, direct and measurable. Server and client impact are real but variable. We are asking a green group for guidance. Should protocol draft include kilowatt per hour conversation? How should we state assumption? TCT operates across the full web stack. Application layer, JSON payloads, sitemap discovery, fingerprinting, HTTP semantics, ETEC 3 or 4, cache control if non-match, transport, TLC 1.3, HTTP 2, gzip broadly connection reuse, infrastructure, data centers PUE, transmission and routing. TCT addresses application and HTTP layers. We need green experts for the holistic view. Energy reporting standards. How should protocol quantify efficiency? Measurement methodology. What metrics? Bytes per URL, 3 or 4 rates. Cross-layer interactions. How do app layer optimization affect transport? TCT is a concrete case study for green sustainability work. What we have completed, the draft is published on Data Tracker, production deployments, open source implementation, public validator, multi-week stability testing. What is in progress? We need expert review feedbacks, energy methodology refinements, additional implementations, larger pilots, interoperability testing. Asking from the Green Working Group. Metric guidance. What should protocols report? Should we standardize measurement? Energy proxies. Are kilowatt per hour conversational acceptable? How to cite assumption? Best practices. Document common pitfalls, query headers, ETEC choices, content conditional semantics. Collaboration. Interest in adoption of joint work, feedback or energy methodology. All resources available now. Draft is published. We have code on GitHub. Validator is on our website. And for every question, you can check my email. Thank you and happy to take questions.
Are there any questions? Mike? So none in the room that I can see. So I think this work is interesting, and I agree there's bits of this work that seem like they overlap with the Green Working Group in terms of definitions of metrics, terminology, for example. So those do seem like there'd be some alignments. We have had a metrics draft, individual draft that we've looked at in the working group. I think that at some point will come back, but it's probably also quite tightly tied to like the data models. We want to make sure the metrics we defined are related to the data models that we're using, and also look at the other SDOs in terms of the metrics they're defining. So there'll be some interest in trying to maybe review the drafts related to metrics that we have, individual drafts, and feeding comments back into those. In terms of this draft, it feels like this is the sort of protocol aspects of this, and the fact that it goes up the full stack is heading outside of what I would think is the Green Charter. And so I don't know if Mahesh is in the room. I can't see Mahesh. Mahesh might have had to go already. So we probably need to speak to the ADs and maybe some of the other working groups in other areas of the IETF to find out what's the best place to discuss this. And it may be after those discussions they say, actually, no, this location is as good as any. My concerns is whether we have the expertise in this room related to the HTTP APIs and how you're using those and extending them as such. And I wonder whether the expertise for those aspects would likely be within the, is it HTTP BIS working, HTTP API working? I can't remember, one of the ones under the WIT area. So one of those working groups. So I think leave it with Diego and I. We will, after this IETF meeting, we will reach out to the ADs and maybe some of the others, other working groups, to see what they think, and then try and give you some guidance as to what bits should come into here, what bits should maybe go elsewhere, and some sort of suggestions of how you might sort of effectively bring this work to the IETF.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for presenting.
Thank you for allowing me.
Right, so that finishes like the first part of today's session. So the second part is really on this the data modeling aspects and how we try and move that forward. And we have two people speaking related to that. First of all, Jan, hopefully you can talk through your slides and your suggestions there. Let me find those. And then after that, again, we'll have some, Benoit will be presenting also on a slightly different aspect, but part of this same overall task. I think Jan is giving a more of a high level overview of how it's progressing, and how he sees it progressing. And then Benoit, I think, will be speaking specifically to one particular area. Jan, over to you. Let me just give you slide control.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, got control. Thanks. Yeah, so since we have this design team light group that's working, it was several times since the last IETF meeting. We wanted to give some sort of status update of what's going on there. And the vision we're working towards is something like this. We have a number of different steps that we would like to make sure that we can fit into some sort of pipeline where we do collection of data from devices about energy, and then aggregate it somehow and store this information in some way, deliver it to other components that need this information, something that is analyzing this in some way, making some sort of presentation of it, and then of course acting on that and feeding back to, so that it affects what is being collected from the devices. This is just a sort of high-level view. Other use cases might reconfigure this pipeline in a different way, might not be any sort of presentation layer at all, or there's no analysis, just presentation. You can feed and construct. This is just the steps that are involved, and you basically build a sort of tree out of these components that deliver the data that you want to wherever you want it. And ultimately, we would like this data to be something that we can hand over to the carbon accountants of the world that are putting numbers into sustainability reports and stuff like this. But I put that in a gray color because it's not in the charter right now for how to deliver this data into existing reporting platforms and the political bloc mandated standards and the daily operations of corporations and stuff like that. But it's ultimately the aim that should be possible at the end. So there are a number of requirements that we have figured out when we are building this. We need to be able to collect everything that is in scope and nothing that is outside the scope, because that is what the governments are asking us to do. When we are measuring, we have to measure everything and everything that is in our domain and nothing that's outside. Since there's a lot of unclarity of what requirements there will be for what to measure and how to measure that going forward, that puts a number of requirements on this. We need some sort of plugin architecture where you can interface with all sorts of equipment, since we need to collect from everything, and using all sorts of protocols. And even what we are measuring, the exact metrics. Today we have one idea, but in 10 years from now, maybe there's a political decision somewhere that it should be measured in a slightly different way, and then we have to be able to cater for that. So we need to have a sort of flexibility in this. Something that all these carbon accountants are very adamant about is transparency. We need to have traceability of where all the data is coming from and how it's being treated, and how it's been, what all the numbers are actually coming from, so that you can do audits and have trust in the data. That is sorely missing in today's numbers. And of course, we need to have rich metadata to know, if we want to draw some interesting conclusions from this, we need to have rich metadata to see what are the sources and times and locations, what are the units, how accurate is this data, and what does it really mean, what has been measured here, so that all the data needs to be annotated with metadata on the path. And as the political landscape changes, the accounting principles evolve, we need to be able to align. We need to have the flexibility to align with them, and we need to have as a goal to align with them, because we need to deliver data that is useful to corporations. And the bottom line here is that we need a plugin architecture where you have these functions for collection, aggregation, storage, delivery, analysis, presentation, and action. But the pipeline itself needs to be configurable, so that you might have several collection stages or several aggregation stages, several storage, delivery, analysis stages. You can skip some of those stages. And at the end, you need some sort of action that can control where power is spent to reduce the power. So we divided up the work that we see into 4 areas. We call them work items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where work item 1 is on this collection and aggregation things that are going on the controller side. Work item 2 is the interface on the devices themselves. I should say that most devices in the network, they already have some sort of reporting mechanism on the device level today. And we need to be able to interface with all of those. But of course, we should also build the new standard for what that should look like for newer devices. But we cannot, the work items 1, 3, and 4 cannot depend entirely on work item 2, the work that's going on there. And work item 3 is to be able to control the power of devices, so that you can give them a sort of policy-based energy management interface and specify which policies that you would like the devices to follow. And work item 4 is to do the same on a sort of more higher level, network level, controller level, orchestrator level. And we have been discussing a bit how much we should focus on each of these work items, but probably we will spend maybe 1/3 of the focus on work item 1, 1/3 on work item 2, and 1/3 of work item 3, according to the latest discussions, as far as I understand. And here are some of the examples of what we've been talking about, like some aspects of this framework that we are talking about here might be useful for other things than collecting energy information. So should that be done here in green, or how should we build that? Many of these things connect with other concepts that you have in other working groups. Like if you want to collect data from a device, you need to track which device it is in the context of everything else that we are doing. For example, in Ivy, we have the topology. How do we map the energy objects to those other data structures that we have in other groups? We have previous work from the MIB, SNMP MIBs in the EMAN. Should we translate those to Yang, or there's many things that we could, many concepts at least, that we could take from there. There are many reasons why you can, or many ways that you can look at the power consumption of devices. You might want to conserve power to save money, but it could also be because you have a certain amount of energy in batteries, for example, and you have to adapt your operations to that power budget. You have to make sure that this battery lasts for the next 24 hours. And for that reason, you might want to control how much power is spent on different things. We have been discussing what energy efficiency means, because it's actually quite complicated concept once you get down into the weeds. It sounds easy and simple enough if you look at it at a high level, but energy efficiency for a router might not be the same thing as energy efficiency for a firewall or for a phone. So it's something, if that's something we should measure, we need to find out a good definition of what it is actually. And there's also a lot of work going on in other standards defining organizations like ITU, for example, that we are also looking at. How should we align with ITU-T L1310, for example? And we have some model code in that we have suggested and discussed, but it's just a small piece, and 98% of the work remains. But we are meeting. We have been meeting most Mondays at 1300 UTC. Now maybe we'll do that every second Monday or so, and anybody can join. And you see the web link there below the time in the slide. And that's the sort of status of this Design Team Light working group. And if you have any comments or questions to what you just saw here, feel free now. But we will soon start longer discussions when it comes to technical details. But any questions of what I presented now, welcome.
Mid.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for presenting, I would say, the ability status. I don't know if you have to discuss right now the various work items, or I don't know the plan, Rob, for this one.
You're welcome to. I mean,
yeah, actually, yeah. So
let's go back a couple of slides, Jan.
Yeah. So basically, I think that you, that Jan, I would say, correctly, I would say, summarize that at least for the work item 1 and 2 for me are really generic, and this is something which is not specific to what we are doing here in this working group. For me, the key focus should be, I would say, the work item 3 and 4. That is what we are really, I would say, chartered to do. So I would really suggest that we adopt something which is really pragmatic here. Try to focus on simple building blocks rather than having something which is really nice. I understand the rationale is really good, but I don't think that this is the right approach if we want to have something to deliver something which is really usable here. So there's one additional item that I think it is really would be useful, and which is not mentioned in this slide, is some kind of common library. If we want, I would say, to reuse some of the work we are doing outside here, providing that a common library that would be useful for the device level, but also the network level, will be something that we need to think about. Leveraging all of common, I would say, aspect there. This is something to think about. But definitely, I think we should really try to avoid diving too much into work item 1 and 2, because for me that's just adjacent work and not specific to green on any aspect.
So I think work item 2 is, because that's like device models for reporting up
I'm not sure. It's because it's about the reporting capability in terms of reporting capabilities and not in terms of energy capabilities.
Okay, fine.
The one about the device, I would say energy capability is the work item 3. At least this is how I understood what Ian presented so far.
Well, I would say that at least we are you and I are not in alignment. My understanding is that 1, 2 is about telling what you're consuming, and 3 and 4 are about controlling what you're consuming. That's my understanding, but that's not.
Actually, it's not, because if you, Ian, please, if you can just show the next slide when you have, I would say, the diagram, the tree diagram there. Not the tree diagram in which you have, I would say, the various mechanisms you have to report the information and so on. Yeah, this one you see, it's definitely something which is very generic there, and nothing to do, I would say, what we are specific to the green part.
So that diagram, I think, ties just to work item 1, is my understanding. So, because that's where Jan started, and so I think and again, this is the problem we've been grappling with for a while is, I agree with you, Med, in terms of wanting to have building blocks. That's absolutely right, and use it generically. And I agree that the item in work item 1 is somewhat generic. It's just like it's a data collection mechanism that goes much more broadly than what green is doing. I think the comment that Jan has been making, and maybe you can make this again, Jan, is that he believes quite strongly that having that framework is important to be able to get the statistics. And that's the question. That's the thing that maybe we don't have.
And I don't dispute this one. It just, I would say, we can parallelize there and can be done, I would say, within here or outside. I don't care personally, but I would really think that some focus should be on the other side, I would say, on the other items, because this is what we are supposed to do. And also because this will be compliant with, I would say, the simplest approach that we have in the charter itself.
Yes, I agree with that. And hopefully, I think that's with Benoit and Gen and Marisol joining in these sort of efforts more directly. I think maybe that will allow these other works to sort of proceed in parallel, I think.
Yes, I mean, I agree completely. It's I think work item number 3 is very interesting. It is something new and something that the industry would have a lot of use for. It would produce a lot of value. So I'm definitely very interested to work on number 3. Work item 1, I disagree in the sense that this is something also that not we as an industry need, but the corporates that are trying to report on energy, they are missing something today, and they have all home cooked solutions with varying and mostly quite low quality solutions for how they report this. And while a lot of the parts in work item 1 are generic, I agree, there's also a lot of energy specific things in there too. I'd say maybe 2/3 is generic, but 1/3 is very specific in work item 1, and it's something that's missing completely in the industry today as a standard. No, I don't think any other standards body has done that either. So I think that's why I'm interested in work item 1. It's something that I feel a demand for in the industry from customers that's saying that they cannot deliver this information to their customers, and the customers are asking. So that's why I'm interested in number 1. Number 2, yeah, I mean, it's nice that we would design a new and proper and clean interface in the modern Yang and all of that, but this can be done with existing interfaces for most devices already. And no matter if we specify a new interface for work item 2, most devices in the field will have old interfaces for the foreseeable future. I'm considering work item 2 as a sort of boil the ocean thing. Until we have this new interface spread to almost all devices in the network, it's not really providing any new value. And when it comes to work item 4, there's a lot of exciting things you can do when you have network visibility on the things that you get from work item 1. When you know what's going on in the network on the service level and have the information from work item 1, there's magic you can do on number 4.
Any other comments on this? I think if not, I think we still need to refine exactly what these work items are. I think Benoit's going to come and talk to something soon. So I'm going to come up Benoit now, and I'll just talk for a moment. and I think that might help fit this into the pictures slightly differently, which would be appreciated. I think my outcome of this is just a reminder that this work's really just starting in terms of the design team, and that's going to carry on. But we just need to make sure it's going in a direction that the working group is agreeing with. I do take Med's point on board that we should make sure we're working within the charter. Okay, thanks, Jan. Benoit?
All right, so Young Data Model, the device model. When I presented on the EMAN framework in the first session, I kind of gently ranted that we are in a year into this charter and we're not discussing power or energy specific characteristics. We know that we've got like 3 young models to be done: power and energy monitoring of the model, power and control model, and then the collection and aggregation model. So we could decide on the order. I'm more on the pragmatic side, which is bottom up. I want to be able to report the power of a device, of a line card, of an interface. Discussing with one vendor this week, he was telling me we don't even have that on an interface level right now on this specific router. That's a problem to me. How can we do Petra if we don't have that? So I'm thinking, can we start bottom up? Whether this is work item 2 or 3, I don't know. I just want to report information. What I heard from operators is that what's specific to green here? Actually, in telemetry, nothing. If you report counters, it's telemetry of counters. If you report energy, it's the same mechanism, right? I just reply on the chat about CBOR. Sure, CBOR is orthogonal, right? It could be XML, it could be CBOR, it could be JSON. But what about the information? What about the schema? That's what I care about. So as Rob mentioned, I was put on a spot like 2 days ago to present a little bit with it in EMAN. So let me do that. What have we done in EMAN from that RFC? You will see a couple of, let's say, tables here. And I will go through some of them. So first of all, the power table. That's the first thing that we should be discussing. I'll come back to this. Nameplate, which unit, the accuracy, the caliber, etc., etc. But how do we identify a specific object, whether this is a device, or this is an interface, a line card? That's why I mentioned to you, Louis, that the question you're asking yourself with Smart PDU is what we have to solve in a generic way, right? One table about the energy. Jan mentioned, it's not that easy, right? Then there is one with power state if you want to control, and one if we want to set how we meter this. Fine. Let's start with the first one. The power table. Well, we all want to report power. Let's come back to this. But what is this? Entity physical index. If you've been there long enough, this is an index in the entity MIP table. Do we care about MIP? Absolutely not. Do we care about having the right index? Yes. So let me explain what we did. Next slide on the entity physical index. Part of the green working group, we extended the entity MIP for 2 things. The first one being this entity physical table, which by the way gives you also the hardware, the firmware, etc., exactly what you had in your Smart PDU. Because my point was that it's not something which is specific to a Smart PDU. A Smart PDU is like a networking object, even if it's independent of a router. But to me, if I manage it, it's just an object. Now, that was the definition. index of this entry. Now, I was thinking, sure, we speak about yang. So hopefully, this index that we need here, that you need in Smart PDU, that we need in POE, that we need everywhere, is it aligned with the yang model, which is the IETF hardware? And maybe with Ivy, but Ivy is like network level. But maybe the network level, we need specific information about devices as well. So that's what we did. And by the way, Gen, we just did the slide together with Gen like this morning, right? So that's why we have to be checked. And we had like 5 minutes and we checked it. So the hardware yang module, there's an index there, that's a name. So we will not be having the entity MIP, the entity physical index from the entity MIP. But we want to link to the name which is there. And by the way, let's assume that you have a router that also supports the entity MIP because it's there. What does it mean? It means that if I support the entity MIP, I will have an integer there, which is the entity physical index from the MIP. It sounds like very basic indices from the router, but it's exactly what we care about. And it's written there. If the entity MIP exists, we have the same index. This is somehow linked to the source ID definition that we have with YAN, but it's the device. It's an interface. It's a line card. It's across devices. Next. The power-related object. Let me read a couple of things here, because actually, when we define this, we said things such as, is the power? Great, check, no. Because it's an average over a fixed number of cycles. What is the SI? I mean, it's in SI units. Because it's very wide, from milliwatts to kilowatts, etc., we had to put another object, which is the unit multiplier. The direction of the flow, right? If the energy object is consuming power, the EU power value will be positive. If the energy object is producing power, the value will be negative. And the energy object is something we define in the framework. What makes me sad is that this working group is not even discussing basic things of reporting like this, right? We all like, oh, let's have a use case on top of that. But if we don't even report it correctly here, I mean, all of the use cases are just useless. And we define the maximum power at the power state. So there is also another one. The caliber, I think it's the next one. No, first of all, the accuracy. Well, what about the accuracy of the measurement? You know, simple things like these are the IEC references that you need if you speak in that area. In a year, we're not even discussing this here. I don't want to say Iman is perfect, it's not the point, but I don't see those topics discussed here. The next one, the caliber. In the example I gave that on a specific router, we can't even have the power per interface. Okay, what do we do then? We just stop the entire project? No. We discussed about having like, this is the actual usage reported, or it's estimated, or it's static, because I have a data sheet that tells me this is that number of watts. This is the type of concept I wanted to discuss in the framework, for which we must have the model there. So very basic topic, but I don't see them discussed here. And now the energy table. I could have the same similarity, the same type of, but the same method. We discussed thing in EMAN, in MIPS. We don't care about MIPS, I care about what was discussed there. If it's right, shall we reuse it? Energy consumed, provided, stored, accuracy, max consume. Discontinuity time, like we had with the old interface counter, right? I was not able to measure for some time. What do we do? Let me go back. Why do I stress all this? Because the vast majority of the the biggest use case that I heard from operator is, I want to be able to report power and energy. And from there, I take an action. Now, if we do that already, this is great. Some operators are telling, I don't want you to control power, right? I've got already too many changes in my network. However, we need it. You mentioned the smart PDU. The smart PDU, and you had, that's interesting, in your Yang module, you had like an admin state and an upper state, not for the interface, but for the energy object, which in the end is the interface. But it's a different concept. So exactly this. But I don't see this being discussed here. And as Matt was telling, we need to have the right building blocks. I think you mentioned groupings, or whatever your term was, something like that, that we're going to build on top of that. And that's why I reacted to the smart PDU. If we have this in a generic way, the smart PDU is just one example of this. So we don't want to have a Yang module which is different for every single use case. Now, why I mention your smart PDU as a good example, it's because a smart PDU is an independent device you put in the data center to give power to servers, router, whatever. How do you know that on a smart PDU, this port is connected to that specific server? You don't know unless you follow the link. There is no discovery mechanism, but you have to code it on a smart PDU. By the way, smart PDU in the past were like with MIPS, and you were about to set, I'm connected to server 3. Now, if you report it, it means that you want to have those relationships in there. I meter on that smart PDU port on behalf of that connected server. That port on a smart PDU or the PoE is actually going to shut down power for that specific device. And aggregation. So what did we do in EMAN? We augmented the MIP module of the entity MIP to create a UUID, which would be unique across the network. And that's what we did with this reference there. And we had the UUID that was connected next to the entity physical index. So something which is global, which is locally relevant, and something which is, an index which is local to device, and an index which is globally unique. All right? So again, that's why each time in the modeling session, I'm asking about those concepts that we need to describe in the framework and that we need to have in the Yang modules. Now, with Jan this morning, we just listed all of the things that we've got here with a table on the left. I don't want to go and present all of these, but this is homework we have to do with a couple of tables there. Again, I don't want to, it's my last slide, I don't want to say everything was perfect in EMAN, but I want us to think about all the things we've been thinking in the past. If it's not good, we change it. If it's good, can we just start with something concrete, right? Which would be bottom up. So my question to you is, what do you think of this methodology? Would the EMAN object, and I put EMAN between parentheses because I don't care about EMAN. I don't care about the MIP. I care about what you saw in the schema. Would this be a good starting point for the Yang module? And then do we start with what? Power, energy to start with, then control, and we could map it to work item 1, 2, 3, whatever. So this is my question to the group, and in the end to the chair. And I would like to get a sense of the room if this is the right direction, if we want to invest our time doing this. Make sense?
I think so. Jan, you're in the queue.
Thanks, Benoit. Yeah, of course, this is very interesting to hear about, and I know about this EMAN work since long ago, and I definitely think it's in the right direction. So I'm just waiting and have been waiting for some time for the Yang corresponding suggestion that would incorporate these ideas. But I would also say that, I mean, if you look at what people are doing for energy reporting today, I guess probably 1/3 of them are using SNMP still. Maybe, I don't know if it's exactly the EMAN model or something else, but, and I don't care, it's fine. They can use SNMP if they want. There's no way that we can fix that quickly. They will keep using that no matter what we do here. So I think that when you say that we should, why are we not talking about this? I haven't been talking so much about it because I think it's a solved problem. Devices out there have this interface already, if not EMAN exactly, so then some other sort of energy MIB that they are using, or other interfaces. So that's why that hasn't been my focus so much. But I think this is definitely the right direction. So if we can have this in Yang, that would be great. It won't solve the bigger problem, but it's one piece in the puzzle.
All right, just one piece of feedback. Actually, whenever you say that some router vendor have that, well, when I speak to operators, they tell me it's still a mess. It's done differently on different devices, and there are bugs, and actually, we don't have the basic rights. Now, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the operators. Maybe they're going to mention what they mentioned to me, but this is not a given that we've got this information already.
I mean, it's a mess. It's a total mess. It's not only different for different vendors, but also between different product lines within vendors and versions of the devices within vendors. And there's 22 different protocols used and all that. So mess, definitely. But even if we come up with something perfectly crystal clear and perfect in here, which we might do sometime in the future, the field doesn't change, not fast anyway. So we are still going to have the mess for as long as I have a career in this space. That mess will continue to exist, and we have to work with that in the other work packages. But of course, that shouldn't stop us from doing the good and nice thing. But we won't be cleaning up this mess for a while.
Thank you, Benoit, for doing this. I think this is going to the right direction. Just some few comments. I would not do this exactly the same. I would say one-to-one mapping between what you have done in EMAN to Yang. I think we have to be, again, pragmatic there and focus on things that are really of high importance for us in this working group. That there are two terms: energy efficiency and energy saving. These two, I'm not sure that they are currently that you can just inherit what we have in EMAN. Maybe we need to do some modeling there. I don't care whether, and I think that's there's where I think that we can have some leveraging between the various layers, the inventory part, the network I would say level, and then the device one. If you can pass the object there using something which is really common, I think that's something we need to think about. So having again a library there will be really, really useful. So I think this is going into a good direction.
Thank you. I wanted to reply to one of your comments, but I've got a buffer overflow right now, so I will come back to it.
Thomas?
Yes, I want to just resonate that this is really important for network operation. I would say even strategic, and also like it is a real mess. I know at Swisscom we are collecting, or we're trying to collect from various network operating system power information. It's really like the measurements to attribute to which dimensions. It's really, really difficult. And I want to say on the Yang push side, you saw probably everybody like how we're trying to automate the Yang data processing chain, and how also bringing standards IETF models such as IETF hardware into the operator's network. And this work is perfectly aligned and would really fit very well. So I really support this work, and I believe this is really strategic and important.
Thank you, Thomas. So I found back what I want to say to you, Matt. So I agree that we don't want to take everything from EMAN and inherit it and say, this is right. So we're going to have these bi-weekly calls. And the way I would picture this is we would take a couple of topics. I would just mention two here. How do we define, how do we define, for example, the accuracy? and there's this way, but we could find different ways. Then does the working group decide, okay, 3 choices, what do we prefer? Boom, we do it. Next one, how do we define the caliber? Like it could be estimated, static, actual. How do we want to do that? Are we missing something? And we validate each of these in the bi-weekly calls. And then we move from there. We could directly inherit everything and say, what do you think? But it's too open as a question. So that's what I wanted to answer to you.
Marisol?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Benoit, for presenting. I just want to mention, I did present PowerF. It was a draft that is not live anymore in favor of the YAM data model. But many of the things that are presented here, accuracy, power factor as well, the link to the hardware, if it's based in IB, if it's based on the IETF young hardware, that's fine, but it's a strong dependency on it. And we did we had PowerF implemented, we did use it in several hackathons as well. And things that can be combined, with the learning, the use cases that we are defining, I think we have a good base. And it's time to put the data model together. But just considering that Iman was a good work, but we did put a PowerF in Young, and those base models that we put there, I think it's something that we have to move forward as well in here. Thank you.
Does it make sense to, I would like to know if I should invest time and energy in doing this. Is this something?
Well, again?
Sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to mention that in the morning discussion, we mentioned that it's not only Iman, but also ITOT, IEC, and other SDOs, they have the similar stuff to be referred. Thank you.
So, I mean, I have a lot of sympathy from where you're coming from in terms of, I think there's definitely a market demand of getting just the data off the devices, using the existing telemetry flows, and in terms of there are a subset of the operator community that just want the data models for the new devices and things that are coming up. So I think that is clear demand, and that's clearly within what the charter was like focused on in these like building blocks. So definitely, yes, I would like us to be working on this. At the same time, I do also get Jan's point of view where he's saying, this is great, you're solving this problem for new devices and things, but he also wanting to solve the problem more generically and say, actually, we know there's lots of old devices out there. How do we make that problem better? How do we solve that? And my hope was, with the design team work, is that we'd actually solve both of those problems at the same time. So that was what I was envisaging, is that we would have, initially I envisaged one person would come up with like a base structure of the Yang for both the devices and the collectors and the aggregation. I'm not sure about the power control one, whether you delay that or not, but I thought we could do that at the same time. But at the moment, that doesn't seem to be going that well in terms of that way. So maybe we had this discussion between you and I and Gen and Jan on, was it Wednesday? And the proposal was to try and for you 3 or 4, including Marisol, to work together. And maybe you're focusing with, again, on this bit. Jan wants to focus on that bit. Does that work with, does that make sense? Because otherwise, I think if we just go to this, I think I'm working on just the device model. I'm not sure that you also want to understand the bigger picture above. Is that possible?
That's possible, and that's welcome. This is somehow where I was maybe a pain when in those modeling meetings I was telling source ID that you want to have. What is this? It's a string, right? But if I take a device, we've got something in a MIP, we've got something in a hardware Yang module. So you can't simply put a string there, and we've got the UID. This is exactly why I was trying to get those discussion, those common things across the different models sorted out. So that makes sense. I believe the mistake we've been doing is that it was like more a paper exercise. And as a consequence, if I deal with a router, there are things in there. And how do we connect that? And maybe if we just start with the device model and say, concretely, what do I put as an index? And then we have this discussion as one of the open issue and it could be maybe one session if we want just on this one. We agree and we integrate in the different young modules.
And it definitely was my desire that we work on a concrete based model, as in that was my aim, was that we get like the concrete structure for the key bits done and working discussed. That was where I was aiming for, rather than the abstract discussions. That's where I was hoping to go for. So rather than polling the room, if you and Gen and Marisol and Jan are happy to sort of try and come up together and discuss these things and bring them back to like a bi-weekly meeting going forward, if that will work for you, and I think will that work for Jan and Marisol and Gen? That's what I would like to do.
That's fine. I mean, we could agree. We've got a wider community here, and I want to make sure I get the support of this wider community, because if we just do it for ourselves, like 4 or 5 people, is this good enough? And this is what I'm trying to get as well, because it's going to take time to do it, right? So I want to invest my time and energy where it makes sense for more people. So if you believe you've got that view, we're good.
Okay. How to phrase this question?
I was trying working coordinately on work item 1 and 2 simultaneously, something like that.
Should I take a seat?
What before we go? It's really hard to see this. Device and controller models. You can't actually see where your typing is. Right, fine. So my question, just to check that people are happy with this, I've got, do you agree that we should work on concrete device and controller models at the same time? Is that capturing what you're asking for? Separately? What, do you say that again, Med? Okay.
Could you repeat what Med said? I couldn't hear that.
So what Med said was, the question is, can we focus the work on the concrete use cases? I find it really hard to type when I can't see what I'm typing. Let me try this another way. So I've started, this should be focusing the work on the concrete use cases rather than abstract models. Having said that, I thought that was already the focus of the working group. So
It would be nice to see many no opinions. Yes.
So somebody's polled no here. Would they like to come to the mic and indicate why they're against this, against like focusing on the concrete models, use cases? Okay, so that's fairly strong. Do we want to ask if we want to only focus on the device model first?
I would ask whether the group feels that we can work in parallel rather than, because otherwise, if that's not the case, then we can ask.
So I'm going to ask two questions. Well, I shall ask. So my question is going to be: should we focus the initial work only on a device model? And I might take that further and say, based on the EMAN MIB as a starting point. No, wait, I'll just do device model. And so if for this one, please say yes if you think we should only focus on a device model initially, or say no if you think we should also be trying to solve either the controller and or the aggregation at the same time in parallel. So my read of that is much more split. There's no clear consensus here, but it looks to me like there's more favor here of trying to do it in parallel, I think, rather than purely focusing on the device model. Is the last question I'm going to ask is whether we should focus on the EMAN as a basis, a starting point. So my last question is, should we focus on using the EMAN MIB, the existing EMAN MIB, that's already in RFC, converted to Yang as a starting point for the device model? So that's not where it'll end up. That's just as an initial point to say, let's start from here, or a subset of that, and then move from that point. Okay, so that one seems to be pretty clear. So I think what we want to do is basically what we what was Marisol's point here? So I think basically what we want to do is what we discussed and agreed on Wednesday when a few of us met. I think we should have these design team like meetings continuing. I think it's very clear that we should be working on device model. I think it's clear that we should be doing that. But at the same time, this is an indication that we should be trying to work at the controller level and or aggregation at the same time. So I think that that's fine. And it's also clear here that using the EMAN as a starting point makes sense to try and bootstrap this work. So what I'm asking for is those four authors to try and work together to help drive that forward. And we will help try and facilitate having these every 2-week meetings with, like I say, large community with input from those authors in terms of trying to help drive the key questions and issues to discuss and resolve. So I think that's everything we had on our agenda today. I think this is like an open mic time. If anyone has any other comments for today's session or any other input on this process, now's a good time to speak. Otherwise, we'll finish a little bit earlier than scheduled. If not, you got any comments? No?
Finishing the notes.
So otherwise, hopefully we'll see some of you in Shenzhen, and also hopefully you have good flights home, or train rides, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, you were dedicated mainly on film.
I'm sure.
There's one section, yeah, because it's after one of
Man, you were so much, you must so much doing AD things that it was.
Don't take my comment.
And we visit each other driving sports. I think
I guess that with these notes are almost done. So that's something that's because talking with Rob, I decided some time ago to avoid embarrassing the descendants with the. We need a note taker. Nobody shows up. So that's
well, I'm not sure.
So just avoid it.
You have no conversation, you don't get to do any notes.
That would be a responsibility, yes. And say them good luck. Just shut up. No, the point of this is that this is a typical matter that gains a lot of interest in terms of, the idea.
Right. The implementation is so much harder.
Exactly. And then you start and you see the list of things that you might need to consider.
I had a similar problem. I work on a tracing specification for another standard store for HTTP. And we were like, you need a place to put how much power was consumed in producing this. And I go through and I research and try to figure out what's going on. I talk to the experts. We came to the conclusion at the end that this is a terrible idea and we're just not going to put it in. Because we couldn't find a way to make sure that the information was meaningful. And that was the hard part. So it's good to see like a focus on the practice.
That's point. Smart reviews
right.
And then they can provide information below.
Right.
That many watts per hour.
Trying to figure out how many, like the presentation earlier, like this many bytes were transferred in you know.
I was out last night.